tomorrow night. Is former Buffs quarterback Shedeur Sanders being unfairly criticized ahead of draft night? And will we finally see, at long last, more than 1,000 days since hoisting Lord Stanley's Cup, the return of the captain, Gabriel Landeskog? Signs are certainly pointing once again toward that being the case this evening for Game 3. All things to get to on today's rundown, but we begin in the world of the NFL, where I might be starting to cry foul a little bit on some of the commentary regarding former Buffs quarterback Shedeur Sanders ahead of draft night, as it's come out through the typical channels that we all see. An anonymous assistant coach in the NFL has spoken on the record under condition of anonymity to NFL insider Tom Pelissero about Shedeur and the impression of the former Buffs quarterback and the interaction he had during the scouting combine and pre-draft process. And that anonymous NFL assistant coach told Tom Pelissero, quote, "It was the worst formal interview I've ever been in my life. He is so entitled. He takes unnecessary sacks. He never plays on time. He has horrible body language. He blames teammates. But the biggest thing is he's not that good." Again, I want to preface, this was a comment made to NFL insider Tom Pelissero by an anonymous NFL assistant head coach. And one can assume that this interview was conducted during the scouting combine in this pre-draft process, where Shedeur was definitely a focal point of attention around the league and here locally. But I'm starting to have a little bit of a problem with the way that the narrative around Shedeur is being crafted as we are just 24 hours or so away from the start of the NFL draft. Is it possible that Shedeur Sanders either had a bad interview for whatever litany of reasons, or didn't respond positively to certain questions that were being asked? Yes. But as someone who covered the Buffs closely in Dion and Shedeur's first year here in Boulder, and myself, and the interactions that we've seen here on campus and during game weeks just this past season, I personally don't take Shedeur Sanders to be some like villainous, cocky, disrespectful character. That's not to say that, like his father, that Shedeur doesn't carry a bit of confidence and swagger and bravado at times. But the way that this is transpiring in the last week or so here, with a lot of the negative publicity and press, specifically this one being released 48 hours or so before the draft from an anonymous coach, this feels calculated. And I just think, I understand you can sit there and say, well, that's part of the business of the NFL. A team might try to down talk a guy or try to damage his reputation because they like him so much and they're out of reach to select him and they want to make him slide. And that certainly has been the case for Shedeur, who at one time there was a question about whether or not he was in the running for the Heisman Trophy in a legitimate way, and whether he was going to battle Cam Ward for the #1 overall pick. Well, fast forward to today, and there's a lot of mock drafts from very respectable in-the-know sources around the league that have Shedeur falling as low as 21 to the Pittsburgh Steelers right after the Denver Broncos pick, or have the Cleveland Browns moving up and making a deal with Denver to trade up and take Shedeur after selecting Travis #2 overall. And you can sit there and justify it and say, well, that's part of the business and that's the NFL and it's lying season, as is the title of today's episode. But I don't have to like it. Even if that's the truth, I don't have to like it, and I don't have to further a narrative that I frankly just don't think is true. Has Shedeur Sanders maybe fast-tracked certain things, been granted access to things, and benefited from having the last name that has been lifted into football immortality by his father? Sure. I think the last name Sanders is a big part of his jersey retirement and his name and number being etched into the walls at Folsom Field forever. But I also think that he takes some undue and unnecessary criticism and backlash for that as well. And he puts an easy target on his back by being kind of the character that he is and having the media and the hype train and all of that is driven by his father. And I just don't like it. I don't know how else to say it other than I don't think it's based in fact. I don't think that it's fair to a young man who, by and large, while yes, maybe he made some an offhanded comment here or there, or maybe it rubbed you the wrong way with the watch pointing that he kind of popularized as a celebration and the things that he carries himself, the way that he talks. But I saw a guy who also in his first year here got his ass kicked because he had no offensive line and was taking hit after hit and kept getting up and kept trying to make plays. And I see nothing but a guy who is trying to carve out his path in life and his path in football as best he can. And as I mentioned, I think there are some detractions that come with all of the hype and publicity that the Deion Sanders circus kind of brings along with it. Speaking of circus, I feel like my head is starting to spin when it comes to the Denver Broncos and what direction they may go with the 20th overall pick in the NFL draft tomorrow night. And it's spinning in multiple different directions because, one, it becomes a situation where are we 100% confident that they're going to pick at 20? Are they going to trade up for the likes of a Colston Loveland or mortgage the farm to move up for a name like Ashton Genty? Are they going to take the George Payton approach because there's a speculation and kind of a widespread consensus that there might only be 14 first-round pick-worthy players, and the difference between pick 10 and pick 25 from a talent evaluation standpoint is not that large. So do they take the George Payton approach and trade back into the late first round or potentially out of the first round? And even then, if they stick at 20, what position of need or of interest are they going to target? Is it going to be a running back like Omarion Hampton, who's been popularly mocked as kind of the number 2 running back in this class behind Ashton Genty, with a gap between them that has been debated for a couple of months now? Is it a defensive tackle in a historically deep defensive tackle class where Daniel Jeremiah and others mocked potentially 21 starter caliber defensive tackles that will go in the 7 rounds of this year's NFL draft, which is a number that supersedes and far exceeds previous years? Is it going to be a tight end like the Colston Loveland that I mentioned before? Or if they trade up, are they in the Tyler Warren market? If they trade back, is there a day 2 name that potentially fits their fancy? And then, as of late, all of a sudden, there seems to be more and more smoke around the prospect of drafting a wide receiver at 20 or in the first round. We've seen the name like Teteroa McMillan, the stud out of Arizona, tossed around. Matt Miller, who is a popular NFL analyst for ESPN. He's definitely a mockster who digs into the pre-draft evaluation process. He went on record and said that the Broncos have done a lot of homework on Luther Burden out of the University of Missouri. When asked about Luther Burden's potential projection in the draft, Matt Miller said, quote, "Luther Burden's range starts at 20, which of course is where the Broncos pick. I know Denver did a ton of work on him. He could be picked anywhere between 20 and 35 is the best guess I can make based on the intel that's out there." So is it, Teteroa McMillan is pretty widely considered one of the top, if not the top wide receivers in this class. Luther Burden now being mentioned. Peter Schrager, formerly of NFL Network and now with ESPN, who has been honestly surprisingly sneaky accurate with his pre-draft predictions and his mock draft that he releases on the day before the draft every single year after making his phone calls and research digging that he does. He has the Denver Broncos selecting Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, who was one of the top wide receivers in the Big Ten and in college football this past year. So that's another name. Mike Kliss had the Broncos listing Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas, as a potential name who could go at number 20. So all of a sudden, it feels like across 4 different positions of need, there are 3 or 4 players at each of those positions that you could realistically find sourceable intel that says the Broncos have been digging around, are interested, and have a projection to select that player. And as exhausting as it is, there's another part of me that's like, damn, that's pretty exciting. And now that the Broncos have seemingly found their cornerstone piece in Bo Nix and solidified the quarterback position, stopped that question from reappearing year after year, offseason after offseason, now this feels like the candy store year, and there's so many different directions they could go with it. Is it a more sensible pick like defensive tackle? Because you've got 3 defensive tackles coming up in 2026 that are going to need contract extensions or decisions made there. Is it a sexy pick like a running back because of the dearth of production at the running back position that we saw from Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Audric Estime last season? What's the future of Cortland Sutton in an orange and blue uniform? And could that influence a wide receiver pick, which might bring back some painful flashback memories of drafting Jerry Jeudy 15th overall and then watching it unravel pretty spectacularly, or the likes of KJ Hamler, who was a second round pick that didn't pan out, and, you know, taking that swing on an offensive skill position player and just hoping it pans out. Does Sean Payton really have the love affair with Colston Loveland, like Daniel Jeremiah and others have told our own Andrew Mason and Mina Kimes and others nationally, that he feels very confident in the fit and the connection between those two players? I don't know, but what I do know is that we're about 24 hours away from finding out, and I think no matter who the Broncos pick, outside of maybe a couple of splashy names, I think we're going to be able to walk away and make a case for whoever they pick in the first round to make a serious impact and a positive influence on the team in 2025 and hopefully beyond. All right. There's a big game coming up at Ball Arena tonight. And I think it is going to be a pivotal telling statement about who is going to win the series between Dallas and Colorado. And a lot of it hinges on the outcome of this game. So to discuss it with me, we bring in Will Peterson, our Denver sports analyst at DenverSports.com, covers the Avs very closely for us here online, digitally, and on the air. Will, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, excuse me. Good to be here, Richie. I'm already losing my playoff voice.
Yeah.
Man. I mean, it's huge tonight. You know, if they were up 2-0, it'd be like, okay, you could drop this one and whatever. But man, game 3 in a 1-1 series generally feels like the winner of that game is going to go on to win the series. So not saying that's for sure happening, but it's a massive game at Ball Arena.
It's definitely not a for sure, but I will tell you that research shows that out of the last 435, I believe, instances of a game 3 between two teams tied at 1 in a playoff series, the team that wins game 3 wins the series 66% of the time.
Yeah, I'll take my chances on that.
So 2 out of every 3, your odds could certainly do a lot less than that. Will, before we get into tonight's game, did it feel to you with the overtime loss where Blackwell snuck it past Blackwood? That had to be fun for Wischusen and the crew to talk about all night. Did it feel to you like the Avs really did let an opportunity slip away to take massive control of this series and steal both games?
Definitely. They could have buried Dallas with that. I mean, even Pete DeBoer said post-game, we were playing for our season. And you look at the third period, that's where I was the most disappointed, Richie. They're up 3-2, and the Stars come out desperate, and the Avs are kind of just going through the motions. It's like, fellas, you ain't up 5-1. You're up 1 goal.
Yep.
And they didn't have that desperation to match the Stars. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way how many people are like, well, we went to Dallas and got a split. That's all we needed. Again, if you lose game 2 big, I would agree with you, but you were 10 minutes away from taking a stranglehold on this series. I'm not going to harp on it too much because, you know, there's still a lot of hockey left to be played, and we expected this to be a dogfight, but anyone who's just doing oh golly gee, we got 1 in Dallas, it's like, well, you could have gotten 2 in Dallas. And sometimes in sports you got to be greedy, especially with a team as good against the Stars. This isn't the Nashville Predators from 3 years ago when the Avs won the Cup, where it was a foregone conclusion they would win round 1. This is a series they could still lose. So yeah, it was disappointing, but you know what? Here we are. Game 3 tonight, you win this one, no one's going to be talking about game 2 anymore.
Yeah, disappointment, and you start using words like that, and it maybe casts some undue shadow onto certain things. But if I was to take a disappointment angle from game 2, it's that I think it spoiled, despite the fact that you might look at a 4-3 game and be like, oof, yeah, things between the pipes weren't what they were in game 1. I think Mackenzie Blackwood still played really, really well in game 2. And some of those acrobatic saves and the kind of stand on the head moments that we saw in game 1 from Blackwood in his first postseason start of his career, I think we saw a lot of those moments in game 2 also, and including into that overtime period where it felt like Dallas just kept cycling the puck through the zone and suffocating it, and Blackwood kept bailing them out. And the Avs, whose forward group traditionally has been the most reliable and potent part of their team, just couldn't find a way to bail their goaltender out in that moment. And that would probably be the most disappointing thing for me. I would expect things to maybe shift with some home crowd buzz and some energy and things of that nature. So getting into tonight, Will, it feels like, and I almost feel like I'm ready to put an imaginary asterisk on this because we went through this before.
Yep.
It feels like tonight is the night after 1,030 something days, 32 days, that it will be that Gabe Landeskog will return to the ice in NHL action, and it will happen in front of his home crowd. We kind of thought, at least I did, I won't speak for you, that this was going to take place on Saturday because of the Ross Colton injury and the things you were going to have to shuffle around there.
Or on Monday.
On Monday, sorry.
Yep.
Gabe goes out for warm-ups. He's, as the captain is, first on the ice after the goaltender, and he's skating around, and he's on the official NHL, score roster sheet and all of that, and then it's a scratch. And we're all kind of left wondering, and Bednar gave an explanation after the game about that whole process. He said Gabe wanted to get in a groove and take warm-up tonight and get in the room and be part of it, so that's why I did that. I still might question why, frankly, we needed to go through it, but hey, Gabe's had a process for the last 3 years, and if this really was part of it, as exhausting and dog and pony show as it kind of felt, I guess I'll move past it. But it feels like that can't happen again tonight, right?
No, I think fans were a little ticked off. They felt like they went through the ringer before game 2. I mean, you mentioned it. There was a sheet, an official sheet from the NHL that said Gabriel Landeskog was in and Miles Wood was scratched. And everyone's saying, well, that's not the Avs, that's the NHL. Well, how does the NHL know? Someone told the NHL that was the case, and then 10 minutes later, it was, just kidding. Miles Wood is playing, Gabe is scratched. I had an NFL buddy text me, been covering the league a long time, said, I've never been handed an inactive sheet for an NFL game where they go, just kidding, 10 minutes later. Like, it just, people are saying mind games. Guys, play mind games with someone that isn't doing the most emotional return in Denver sports history. Like, let's not do mind games on this. Let's just be a little more straightforward on whether or not he's back.
I did see that, it's gamesmanship and it's, you're playing chess. And it's like, yeah, but one, nobody needs to play chess. And in this case, because I don't think Peter DeBoer and the Dallas Stars, who are a 100-point team themselves and are no stranger to the postseason and all that, are sitting there going, gosh, golly gee, I wonder if Gabe's going to be out there.
Yeah, I don't think they were frantically panicking.
So it's like,
we got to redo our whole lineup.
You're playing chess with somebody that's watching another game.
Exactly.
And it's like, so, all right. Will, we got a lot of interesting tidbits out of morning skate today.
Yep.
Gabe Landeskog was first one out on the ice for practice. He was wearing a Power Play 2 sweater. And there is speculation that he may contribute in that way, in addition to perhaps swapping Arturi Lehkonen and Valeri Nichushkin on their power play lines. I think Valeri Nichushkin's had a slower than desired, less productive than desired start to these playoffs, and that could be Jared Bednar's response to try to shake things up. We also assume if Gabe Landeskog is going to be on the Power Play 2 unit, he probably slides in there on the third line. And there was speculation about, okay, does that bump out Joel Kiviranta? Is it Miles Wood? Who kind of gets the axe there? Well, based on, some of the rushes that were taken and the way it looks like Miles Wood would get the bump over Kiviranta, moving Kivi down to the fourth line. Do you feel like your initial impression of some of these shifts, because you can say, it's not going to make that big of a difference, but I think everything in this series with a team like Dallas makes a difference. How are you feeling about those potential roster shakeups? Yeah,
there's a lot going on. Also, Sam Malinsky looks like he'll be in tonight for Eric Johnson as well, which obviously EJ's a fan favorite, but Malinsky
had to do it.
Malinsky's probably a better player at this point. So my gut is this, Richie. We were all watching the game on Monday night. I heard Parker Kelly and Jack Drury and Logan O'Connor's name 100 times more than I heard Jonathan Drouin's and Brock Nelson's and even Valeri Nichushkin's. It was like, and the fourth line scored 2 goals. They were great. Don't get me wrong. But there was moments where I'm like, is Bedsy playing the fourth line more than the second line? Like, it sort of felt that way. They were on the ice so much. So clearly something has to shake up. I'm good with a Lehkonen and Nichushkin swap. I'm good. And frankly, I'd put Valeri Nichushkin with Nathan McKinnon, because how do you think you get him going? Put him with 29.
Exactly.
And then on the power play, Landeskog also did take 2 shifts with PP1 today as well. So he could be on power play 1. listen, they scored 3 goals, but again, 2 of them came from the fourth line. 1 came from the best player in the world, and Nathan McKinnon. They need more. Depth is the strength of the team. Chris McFarland remade the team to have depth. It didn't show up in the first 2 games. So, Richie, you outlined it very well. I am good with this. I would shuffle tonight. I don't think that's panicky, okay? I just think it's acknowledging that we didn't get enough out of those guys in the first 2 games. We need to switch it up. I mean, Jonathan Drouin was a ghost. Like, he was a straight up ghost. I don't remember him doing anything of significance in either of these 2 games. So, yeah, I'm good with all of it. How you feeling?
I feel pretty good about it. I think the blue line shakeup was probably more obvious. And while it might not be as impactful as getting some more juice out of your second line, because you can't have a situation where your top line plays like it plays, and you get the production out of a fourth line with Logan O'Connor and Parker Kelly and Jack Drury, and you match Dallas's fourth line, who's played exceptional as well. So you're getting a boost on your out of your bottom 6. Your top line's playing like your top line, and then you just have a hole in your second line. I would argue that I think I'm more concerned about the second line getting defibrillated a little bit and jump starting that motor. And maybe that means moving Val up and Lehkonen down or what have you. But yeah, that crew with Val, Drouin, and Brock Nelson, there's got to be something going there.
Yeah, it just isn't working right now. And even Bednar said after game 2, he needs to see more out of him. He's a man of few words in the playoffs. Anyone who knows Jared Bednar knows he's actually a pretty chatty guy, really nice guy. But every year we've seen this, and we've seen it 8 years in a row now. He just goes into lockdown mode in terms of information. But by him saying we need to see more, and then based on what we saw at morning skate today, Richie, I would expect it to look a lot different tonight. I also, if he plays, and I think fans are going to be upset if he doesn't, because they're going to feel like they were dragged through the emotional ringer again. But if he plays, I would start Gabriel Landeskog's line tonight to just let Ball Arena go nuts when Alan Roach announces him as a starter. I've been in that building hundreds of times. I've heard that building very, very loud. It might be the loudest. I'm talking louder than when they won the cup there in 2001, when the Nuggets won the NBA title 2 years ago. It might be the biggest pop we've ever heard in that arena tonight when Gabriel Landeskog is announced.
The most raucous, loud, intense sporting environment that I have ever been a part of. And I, working in this industry, have been fortunate to view in person a lot of amazing sporting events, from NBA finals to Stanley Cup final to college football playoff and Big Ten championship, Final Fours, national championships in basketball, all that stuff. Without even a sliver of doubt, the craziest sports environment that I've ever been a part of was game 1 against Tampa in the Stanley Cup final when Burakovsky hits the overtime game winner. I have never felt any arena, let alone Ball Arena, shake and erupt like that. And I, without trying to be too hyperbolic, I'll agree with you. I think that from a WWE pop perspective, the return of Gabe Landeskog touching the ice in front of his home crowd could rival that kind of noise. Yeah, and they only announced the starters, so you got to think Bednar starts him to get that moment. Obviously, it'll be super loud when he takes the ice for pregame skate and all of that, and we'll be all over it. But just, you're right, the single pop, Alan Roach, your captain, number 92, Gabriel Landeskog. I just got chills just now hearing
that may set the place on fire. And then let's be honest, they could use a laugher. And in 2022, we saw laughers at home. I mean, game 2 against Tampa, they won 7-1 or something. Like that Nashville series, they were up like 4-0.
Edmonton, they won 8-4.
Exactly. So it's like, Dallas is really good. So people are going to say, Will, I can't believe you're predicting this. I'm not predicting it. But can you use that boost to be up 3-0 after the first period and maybe feel like, okay, we can win this one 6-2, something like that? Like, that would be the emotional boost of Landeskog, is sort of steal a game in a less stressful fashion if you can just kind of come at them in waves because you're riding that momentum throughout.
And when you're talking about a series as tightly matched as Dallas and Colorado clearly is, a sneaky kind of needle mover or shift in that direction, like say it gets the crowd fired up, the guys are juiced, and they do jump out to like an early 2-goal lead or something like that, or it goes from 1-1 to 3-1 kind of thing. I truly think that a 2-goal deficit, because of how talented both of these teams are, how well Blackwood's playing in the net. Ottinger, if you look at save percentage and certain things like that, Blackwood's actually been better, but Ottinger's been no slouch, especially in game 2. So you've got solid goaltending, you've got deep forward groups. I think a multi-goal lead for either team is going to be hard to overcome, which is, I think, what we've seen. It was 2-1 before the floodgates opened in game 1, but that was 7 minutes left in the game. It's a 1-goal game. And in this one, it was like every time a team scored, the other team was able to respond quickly in kind to tie it back up. And it wasn't until Dallas scored the 2 in a row to end up winning it in overtime. So a 2-goal lead you don't want to say insurmountable, but I think it means a lot in this series specifically. So if Gabe Landeskog's energy and presence and the vibe from the crowd can help the Avs give just a slight edge, and it just takes one little bit of puck luck bounce, I think that could be massive in this series.
Oh, totally. I'm not saying Avs first period because I don't give out advice, but Avs first period might be worth a little look. Let's just put it that way, because I think the building's going to be on absolute fire. Now, again, if he somehow doesn't play, and Jared Bednar after morning skate, is he going to play? We'll see. What's it based on? Gut feeling. Those were the 4 words he gave after morning skate here in the last hour. So I don't know. Whereas Pete DeBoer was asked, is Miro Heiskanen playing? And just in the last 15 minutes, he said no. He said he's not playing. So one coach is just telling you, and the other coach is still moving the chess pieces around. I wish Bednar would just say it. He didn't say it. I'll be in the press box tonight, Richie. I'll be looking at the lineup sheets, making sure Gabe's on there. You can bet I ain't tweeting anything out until I get the official one from the Avs.
Yeah.
Because if I get the NHL one and it says Gabe's playing, I can't trust it based on what happened after game 2. So we'll see. But, man, call it 7:35 tonight. That's when we'll know, because puck drop will be at 7:52. We thought at 7:31 he was going to play in game 2. By 7:35, we knew he wouldn't. So if you're looking to a minute, the answer 7:35 is probably when we'll know this evening.
On the way out, Will, I want to give you one more potentially, and maybe cause for concern is too strong. So maybe I'll just call it something that's got my eyebrow raised a little bit. We talked about the shuffling up of the blue line, right? Sam Malinsky potentially or hypothetically making his playoff debut in the second pairing with Ryan Lindgren, and then repairing Josh Manson and Sammy G as your third pairing, which leaves, Eric Johnson and Keaton Middleton as your scratches. But I came across some numbers earlier today that cause for concern might be a little strong, but eyebrow raise is definitely on the table. And that is that there is hard data to suggest that the top line defensive pairing for the Avs in Cale Makar and Devon Toews, they've been getting shelled a little bit. Their expected goals against percentage is higher. It's at 60%, which is astronomically high for what those two normally are. You're talking about 2 of the top 15 defensemen in the National Hockey League, and probably a top 5 pairing, I would argue, in the National Hockey League. Do you have any kind of eyebrow raise or concern, given the way that we saw Dallas just kind of cycle it around and gang up on the Avs in their defensive zone a little bit? Is there any concern about maybe Devon Toews and Cale Makar potentially being a little leaky on the defensive side of things?
It's not something that I'm gonna worry about too much yet, because I like how you put it. Not cause for concern, but just how about this? Let's just keep it on our radar. Okay, let's just keep it on our radar. Now, the other side of things is Makar and Toews are both so deadly offensively that they can almost cancel that out in a sense. But yeah, I mean, they're both very good defenders as well, and you want to see that lockdown defense from them. The thing I'll say to keep an eye on is ice time, because you got to win 16 to win the cup. The Avs have only won 1. They got 15 to go to hoist Lord Stanley, and they're flashing the graphic on the screen the other night in OT. Devon Toews has played 32 minutes. It's how sustainable is that kind of stuff? Yet another reason why you wanted to get game 2, because what do you need, Richie? You need short series.
Yeah.
That benefited them so much in 2022 because they had these long layoffs. If you go 7 with the Stars, you may have to turn around and play the Jets in Winnipeg 36-40 hours later. That's why it's important to win both these home games. Get up 3-1. Hopefully Dallas folds a little bit, and then you can get some time off. And also root for the St. Louis Blues to make it a series with the Jets, and hopefully that one goes as long as possible.
Yeah, and that could certainly be a reason why. And you don't, similar to how we talk about with Jokic in the NBA, you shouldn't let advanced analytics and data tell the whole story, but it shouldn't be ignored either. And I do think that the offensive prowess that a pairing like Cale Makar and Devon Toews have, and maybe their kind of urgency to rush the ice on a breakaway and try to produce offensively could maybe hurt them in certain shifts on the defensive side. That's actually one sneaky thing I like about mixing up the second and third line pairings with Malinsky and Lindgren and Sammy G and Manson, is that you keep from having 2 offensive-minded defensemen on the same line together. And I think it's a better cohesive mixture with that way than it would have been previously. Well, Will, like we said at the top of the segment here, the winner of Game 3 in a series tied 1-1 has a 2 out of 3 chance of winning that series. And to me, based on, general principle and data, that's good enough of odds to make me think that you always hate throwing around must win, but it's flirting with that territory, especially with how physical these first 2 games have been and the toll it can take as the series goes on.
It's a really like to win game.
Mm-hmm.
Really like to win game tonight at Ball Arena. Season's not over if you lose it, but you're feeling real nervous if you do.
Well, as Gary Kubiak famously said, we are fixing to find out. We will get to know that a little bit later this evening when the puck drops at Ball Arena, where theoretically the captain will cometh, and it will be real and meaningful.
What are we knocking on? Granite?
Is this marble? Is this faux? But anyways.
Oh, we pay for the nice stuff around here. It's marble, baby.
Will, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate all of the work that you do. Cover not just the Avs, but the Buffs and the Broncos and everything you guys have going on at DenverSports.com. It's such a powerhouse of knowledge and information that I certainly enfold into my daily routine every day. And then all of our social media channels. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, all the social media channels at DEN Sports 1043. And we will catch you tomorrow morning where we will have Game 3 reaction, and it will finally be here. The day of the NFL draft will be upon us, and the hand-wringing and speculation about who the Denver Broncos will select in their first pick of the 2025 draft will be over. We'll catch you then. I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put